Hello and welcome to the Grove, and welcome to Runeterra. In this vibrant tapestry of reality, stories as large as the cosmos and as small as a yordle all coincide. Runeterra is a beautiful world with a wide breadth of lore, from the heartwarming story of Nunu and Willem, a Yeti and boy bound together by ancient power, the loss of kin, and a shared love of snowballs, to Belveth, the nightmarish empress of the void, birthed from the essence of an entire devoured city. Her presence is a nightmarish reality threatening to engulf any who dare to cross her path. And zooming out, Runeterra is not without its larger threats. Viego, with his heart shrouded in darkness, the Watchers whose gaze freezes the soul, the celestial might of Aurelion Sol, Mordekaiser the Iron Revenant, the mysterious and catastrophic world runes, the fearsome Darkin, and more. Each harbors the power to reshape Runeterra or to bring about its end. Whether you're seeking dark corners, mighty peaks, cities of light, enchanted forests, or simply the warm hearth of a local inn, the lore of Runeterra beckons you. Prepare to be immersed in a world unlike any other. Welcome to Runeterra. First, let's turn our gaze to the populace of Runeterra, the races that travel its lands and forge its future. Within the diverse ecosystem of Runeterra, three primary races exist: the versatile humans, the enigmatic yordles, and the mystical Vastaya. Humans in Runeterra vary on a large scale: heroes and villains, mages and warriors, farmers and monarchs. Their resilience and adaptability has seen them establish kingdoms and forge empires amidst the magic and mystery surrounding them. Yordles, on the other hand, are a delightful enigma. They are diminutive beings of immense magical presence, often mischievous but embodying a deep connection to the spiritual realm. Their appearances are as whimsical as their nature, for all Yordles hail from a place in the spirit realm known only as Spandal City, a place of unfettered magic where the foolhardily can be led astray by myriad wonders and end up lost in a dream. Then there are the Vastaya, a race of chimeric beings ranging in diversity. They are children of a wild, magical union between the spiritual and the animal, wielding powers that are as varied as their striking appearances. Some walk on two legs, others prowl on four, some have the wings of an eagle, while others bear the tails of lions. So whether you're drawn to the familiar human cities, enchanted by the mystical Yordle spirit, or captivated by the exotic allure of the Vastaya, Runeterra offers a place for every story, a race for every legend, and soon enough, a character for every player. Now let's delve into the very fabric of Runeterra itself. To truly grasp the essence of this world, one must journey back to its genesis, to the forces that shaped its existence. In the beginning, before the existence of time, space, or reality, there was only the nothingness of the void, a vast emptiness that acted as the home to entities without form or sentience, known later as the Watchers. However, this silent nothingness was disrupted by the sudden appearance of reality, and in the first breath of creation, the celestial dragon, Aurelion Sol, was born. Aurelion Sol began populating the empty space around him by forging stars, and other aspects also came to be in existence. Yet this radiance stirred the ancient and ominous Watchers. Roused by the dawn of reality, these eldritch entities had been slumbering in the silence of nothingness. Now awakened, they grow ever more annoyed with the newly formed reality that interrupted their non-existence. However, they are unable to cross into reality to destroy this light and return to their slumber. Moving into reality ourselves, the planet Runeterra is taking shape, orbiting a fairly unremarkable star created by Aurelion Sol eons earlier. Zooming into Runeterra, we find a land at war, in a conflict that would later be referred to as the Titan War. Though this battle is primarily shrouded in mystery, it takes place in the realm that would later be called Ionia, and raged between the mortals and a race of sky giants. Only by the intervention of the Vastaya Shirei, enlightened mortals who took the power of the spirit realm into themselves, was victory eventually won. The spirit realm is a realm parallel to the realm of Runeterra. It is a realm of Yordles, mystical beings, demons, and more. It is whispered that the Vastaya of today trace their lineage back to this cataclysmic conflict. Each of the Vastayan tribes is believed to originate from an individual Vastaya Shirei that had offspring with non-Vastaya Shirei, such as humans. Around the same time as the Titan War, the Freljordian demigods reigned supreme. Among these divine beings were Ornn, the master of forging and craftsmanship, Volibear, the embodiment of the relentless storm, and Anivia, the ethereal spirit of life, death, and rebirth. Humans seeking to honor Ornn established Hearthhome. This industrious group, later revered as the Hearthblood, strove to achieve Ornn's lofty standards of perfection through their masterful creations. On the other side of the Freljord, Anivia sees kindness in the Yetis and grants them the Heart of the Blue, also known as the Heart of Anivia. This transforms the Yetis into magical beings and allows them to make true ice. True ice is a magical ice that could only be created by the Yeti, and the magic given to them by Anivia. A very rare mineral, it is so cold that it can never be melted. Within this era, the three sisters, Avarosa, Cirilda, and Lysandra, were born. They embarked on a quest to master the world's arcane energies. However, their ambitions kindled the ire of the demigods, particularly Volibear, who saw their defiance as challenging his authority. Volibear, seeking to end the three sisters, summoned Ornn to arm the Ursine, a formidable tribe of spirit walkers, human shapeshifters loyal to the storm demigod. When Ornn refused, a catastrophic conflict ensued, resulting in the decimation of the Hearthblood and a fissure between the divine siblings. Volibear, fueled by rage from the clash with Ornn, confronted Lysandra in a vicious battle, eventually overpowering her and slashing her eyes, causing permanent blindness. Thwarted and sightless, Lysandra turned to dreamwalking, which inadvertently connected her with the Watchers. The eldritch entities manipulated her to facilitate their invasion into the material realm, promising near immortality and power in return. With this dark pact, the sisters united the Freljord and waged war against the demigods. However, discord arose as Avarosa and Cirilda opposed Lysandra's alliance with the Watchers. Eventually, Lysandra begins her end of the bargain with the Watchers, bridging them to the material realm. It is in this moment where Lysandra realizes her mistake. The Watchers threaten to consume all the world. Lysandra allies with her sisters and the Yetis with their power of true ice to combat the Watchers. Amidst this catastrophic war, Lysandra stole the true ice magic from the Yetis and sacrificed everyone, even her sisters, to imprison the Watchers in true ice at the bottom of the Howling Abyss. In the aftermath, true ice, the hallowed legacy of the Yetis, now stands as a bulwark against these void nightmares. But corruption spreads, and slowly this pure substance mixes with the void, becoming dark ice, a sinister perversion of its once pure form. Today, only one Yeti remains to tell this story, Willem, who carved it into the walls of the once lively home of his people. There is an alternate version of this story though. In all the vast libraries of the Freljord Citadel, only a single written account remains, and that was penned by Lysandra's most trusted scribe many thousands of years ago. This version does not mention the Yetis. Instead, it focuses on the War of the Three Sisters, the final dark days of the war, where Avarosa and Cirilda finally marched their warriors up into the mountains to face Lysandra before the walls of her own fortress. And it was then, at the height of this bitter confrontation, that the Watchers finally came to Runeterra. The ground split open, swallowing thousands of warriors into the abyss beneath it, before the first of the dread things heaved itself into existence. Lysandra saw these abominations now for what they were, and knew what had to be done. Summoning every last iota of the ancient magic around her, including that of her allies, she sacrificed everything and everyone to seal the rift between the realms with true ice, entombing the Watchers within it. Both stories have the same ending, the Watchers frozen at the bottom of the Howling Abyss, patiently waiting for their chance to end existence and return to their void slumber. Moving out of this abyss, into the space around Runeterra, Aurelion Sol finds the planet orbiting the sun he created eons earlier. He did not know who created this world, only that it was not him. The other aspects, who seemed unusually invested in it, implored him to come closer. The tiny inhabitants of the insignificant land of Targon named him for the golden light of the sun he had gifted them, and the aspects commanded them to bring forth a suitable offering in return. The mortals climbed to the peak of their tallest mountain and presented him with a splendorous crown. From the moment it touched Aurelion Sol's brow, he knew this was no gift. The accursed thing clamped in place with unimaginable force, and he could feel his knowledge of the sun and its creation being stolen and scrutinized by intelligence vastly inferior to his own. Worse still, the power of the crown hurled him back into the heavens and prevented him from getting any closer to Runeterra again. The other aspects then set the mortals on the task of building a sun disk in Shurima. and with the help of some Ishtali mages, they succeeded. With this, they channeled Aurelion Sol's celestial power to raise immortal god warriors for some unknown conflict that was apparently still to come. To the south, sometime later, Icathia, a vassal state of ancient Shurima, eventually rebels against Shurima in a bid for independence. But against the armies and the ascended beings of Shurima and Ishtal, Icathia had little chance. Desperate for victory, Icathia released the Void in battle, despite Zillion's protest. Zillion was a member of Icathia's governing council, and a prodigious elemental mage who seeks mastery over time itself. Once the Void was summoned, it attacked and killed Icathians, Ishtali, and Shurimans alike. Zillion, desperate to save innocent lives, urged as many people as he could to his tower and removed the entire structure from time. The Void, along with the Icathians who made it to the tower, were frozen in time, but only within those walls. Outside this blip in existence within Zillion's tower, the regular timeline continued. Ishtali and Shuriman ascended battled Void creatures, but they were losing ground. Eventually they discover one of the few known ways to combat the Void, and that is to starve it. With no organic or magical sustenance nearby, the Void's material growth will slow until it eventually falls into a dormant state. In the aftermath, Icathia was erased from the annals of history in the hopes of maintaining this dormant state of the Void. Sometime later, back in Shurima, denied godhood by a base act of treachery, the last Shuriman emperor, Azir, was lost, along with the Sun Disk itself. Aurelion Sol roared with glee when the Sun Disk failed, while the people, filled with fear and sorrow, looked to the remaining Ascended to protect them. But the Ascended, now bereft of purpose and scarred by what they had endured in facing the Void, became twisted in body and mind, eventually naming themselves Darkin and raising hordes of mortal warriors to conquer the world. The aspects of Targon, who had inspired their creation, were forced to intervene, imprisoning the Darkin within their own accursed weapons. The battle between the people of Runeterra, the aspects, and the newly dubbed Darkin would forever be remembered as the Darkin War. Meanwhile, in eastern Valoran, in a land that will later be known as Noxus, a mighty warlord by the name of San Uzal rules all. He eventually dies but refuses to fade. His will, tempered by rage and torment, held him together. The day came when a coven of sorcerers resolved to bring San Uzal back from the dead. Deceiving the mages who had resurrected him, the warlord was reborn as Mordekaiser and immediately set about conquering the material realm from a place he raised, known as the Immortal Bastion. Though it took almost 3 centuries, he was eventually defeated by the alliance of Noxi tribes, who inherited the empire he had built. But this was part of Mordekaiser's plan. In the once empty wasteland of death, all those who had died under his latest reign were waiting. He dominated all of them, creating an eternal army. Mordekaiser forged a new empire, an empire of the dead, and this army acted as building blocks and mortar of his afterworld. Back on Runeterra, Mordekaiser's name is still whispered in fear and awe by those who study the old histories. For them, the greatest terror would be for Mordekaiser to find his own way to return permanently. It is something they pray will not come to pass, for they know of no way to stop him. On the other side of the world, in a place known as Camavor, a king's wife Isolde is dying from an assassin's poisonous blade intended for him. The king's name? Viego. His search for an antidote became desperate, crazed, unable to accept his wife's death. Every treasure of the kingdom, every scrap of wealth, was sacrificed to his quest to return her to him. As the land fell into disarray, Viego hid himself away with Isolde's body, becoming hateful and violent. Then came the day he learned the secret of the Blessed Isles, of its water that healed any ailment. With his great army, he stormed the peaceful country by force, slaughtering everyone who stood in his way, until he at last breached its inner sanctum and let his wife drift beneath the blessed water. She would return to him, no matter the destruction he wrought, no matter the cost. And for just one moment, she did. Isolde arose a horrifying wraith of shadow and rage, and in her pain, her anger, her confusion at being ripped from death, she took Viego's own enchanted blade and thrust it through his heart. The magic of the waters and the ancient sword clashed, and the chamber's energy erupted, tearing across the isles and trapping everything it touched in tortured, conscious undeath. This land, no longer known as the Blessed Isles, but the Shadow Isles. And when the Blessed Isles destroyed, many powerful artifacts it once housed were let loose upon the world. One set of such artifacts were the powerful world runes, fragments of the raw magic that once shaped the world from nothingness. The desire for this power by the mortal races of Runeterra led to the Rune Wars, which were historical wars where the mortals of Runeterra used world runes to fight each other. On the fields outside Combe, the renowned mage Tyrus and his apprentice Rise witnessed the first devastating attack in the Rune Wars, a sight that would haunt Rise's nightmares for the rest of his unnaturally long life. These wars were so brutal that they erased multiple civilizations, land masses, and much of the recorded history from the face of the planet. After decades of almost apocalyptic battle, the last of the Noxi were forced to retreat inside the Mortal Bastion for shelter from the magical fallout. When they finally emerged, the land beyond had been ravaged, but they survived. They were alloyed as a single people, no longer Noxi, but Noxus, and have marked their calendar from this date ever since. To the east, a group of refugees from the Rune Wars settled in a land they would later call Demacia. It was declared that Demacia would be a sanctuary for magic, now and forevermore. The capital, the great city of Demacia itself, was built upon the riddle of petricite, a peculiar white stone that dampens magical energy. Although the Rune Wars have ended, Rise now works to find all the world runes. He must retrieve these artifacts before they fall into the wrong hands, for Rise understands the horrors they can unleash on Runeterra. Sometime later, merchant clans controlling the trade routes between Valeron and Shurima accelerated construction of vast access ways and conveyors. However, excavations for these sun gates undermined the ancient port city of Zaun, plunging whole portions of the city into the lightless caverns beneath. And in the Serpent Isles, more and more bedraggled fortune seekers were washed up on their shores. Already present on the shores were the Buhru people. One Buhru many people are familiar with is Alawi, although she would not be alive at this point. The Buhru people have many traditions, from the worshipping of Negakaboros to the discipline of monster hunting. It is unknown when Negakaboros came into existence. Known also as the goddess of motion, Negakaboros is the reigning deity of Bilgewater. While often depicted as a tentacle kraken with many eyes and sharp teeth, the avatar manifestation of her has a more humanoid appearance. Anyways, missionaries from the Buhru granted these Palangi outsiders refuge in the southern island bays. This settlement would eventually grow into a bustling port city in its own right, known today as Bilgewater. Returning to Valeron, Demacia and Noxus have expanded over the years, and it is now when the first Demacia Noxian War took place. It was a historical period in which Noxus' conquest was halted by Demacia, resulting in Noxus dominance declining for half a century. The weakened Noxus sought to reclaim its former glory by expanding its border east, invading Ionia. This is known as the Noxian-Ionian War. At the same time, they sought to expand their border north, claiming the Freljordian Iron Spike Mountains. The bitter cold halts Noxus' advance in the north, and Ionians unite to push them back in the east. Because of these failures, the current leader of Noxus, Borum Darkwill, is overthrown by Swain, who replaces Noxus' leadership with the Triforix, which is where 3 individuals would rule Noxus together, each embodying one principle of strength, those being vision, might, and guile. This new empire eventually sends Cassiopeia, a noblewoman from Noxus, to Shurima. She begins looking to hire a guide that will take her to the fabled lost city. She hires an owner of a legendary blade, the mercenary called Sivir. Once the party arrives near the foothold of the Tomb of the Emperors, Cassiopeia realizes that Sivir's ancient weapon, the Chalakar, is a key. Cassiopeia betrays Sivir, stabbing her in the back. She picks up Sivir's blade, putting it into the lock and triggering the Guardian's curse. Cassiopeia is bitten by a gruesome Tomb Guardian, whose venom transformed her into a viper-like predator. As Sivir lies betrayed and bleeding, something incredible occurs. Unknown to her, Sivir is the last in the bloodline of Azir, Shurima's lost emperor. As her blood soaks into the ancient sands, a deep magic sparks to life: resurrection. Azir is snatched back from oblivion. Reborn, He carries a dying Sivir to the oasis of dawn, the mother of life, in hopes that her life can be saved. When he arrived, the oasis was empty and dry, but with every step Azir took, clear water began filling the rocky basin. Azir immersed Sivir's body into the restorative waters of the oasis, and the blood washed away, only a faint scar remaining where the blade had pierced her. And with this act of selflessness, Azir was lifted up in a column of fire as the magic of Shurima renewed him, remaking him as the ascended being he was meant to become. The sun's immortal radiance poured into him, crafting his magnificent hawk-armored form and granting him the power to command the very sand itself. Azir lifted his arms, and the ruined city shrugged off the dust of centuries spent beneath the desert to rise anew. The sun disk lifted into the sky once more, and healing waters flowed between temples, heaving themselves back into the light at the Emperor's command. To Aurelion Sol's frustration, the sun disk was back. Meanwhile, in the cold north of the Freljord, Nunu gets a flute from his mother, Laika, so he could learn to play her melodies himself. In the safety of their cart, the two bundled together and followed the knotted string that served as Laika's heart song, recording everywhere they'd been together as the years came and went. When the caravan was attacked by raiders, Nunu was separated from his mother, forced to wander the harsh, unforgiving land of the Freljord alone. To the south, the Sentinels of Light continued to battle the remnants of the Ruination leaking from the Shadow Isles. The Sentinels of Light are an ancient order of hunters, originally formed in the Blessed Isles. Its members are currently scattered across Runeterra, defending it from the undying wraiths of the Shadow Isles. A member of the Sentinels of Light, Senna, recruited the man she would later fall in love with, Lucian, into the fold. Senna and Lucian eventually come in contact with the sadistic wraith, Thresh. As Lucian is about to be struck down by Thresh, Senna intervenes. Thresh's chains whipped towards Senna as she stood between the wraith and her husband. More painful than the sight was seeing the look of anguish on Lucian's face. With her last breath, Senna screamed for Lucian to run. Back in Bilgewater, Sarah Fortune, aka Miss Fortune, sets a plan in motion to kill Gangplank, the man who brutally murdered her family. Plots within plots saw his ship, the Deadpool, blown to flaming wreckage in the harbor, and the tyrannical Reaver King overthrown. Best of all, everyone in Bilgewater saw him fall. It was everything Sarah could have hoped for, exactly as she planned. At this point, we start to see harrowings in Bilgewater. The black mist reaches across the sea from the Shadow Isles, and the spirits of the dead go with it. Those slain by the spirits during the harrowing are damned, their souls dragged back to the Shadow Isles when the black mist retreats. Moving back to Piltover and Zaun, we see the events of Arcane, the Netflix animated series, take place. The show centers on the lives of two sisters, Vi and Powder, who are torn apart by a series of tragic events in the underbelly of Zaun. While Vi grows up to be a fierce protector, Powder spirals into an unstable and dangerous inventor, Jinx. Their personal conflict is set against the backdrop of tension between the gleaming city of Piltover and the gritty undercity of Zaun. As Piltover advances with its transformative Hextech technology, the divide between the cities deepens, igniting a conflict that draws in other characters, leading to a climax that threatens to alter the fate of both cities. Towards the end of this is when you could say that the events of Convergence take place. Only it's important to note that Convergence is happening on a separate timeline. We know this because Future Echo looks through the multiverse at the end, including different timelines, and one of those is Arcane, where we see the last drop. And we have been told that Arcane is canon on the main timeline, and although not confirmed, it's pretty evident that the main timeline is the one the Riot team will use for the Riot MMO. Don't worry, things only get wishy-washy with Echo. After all, he is the boy who shatters time. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the lore of the Riot Forge titles too much, I only state what's necessary. I think it's better you play those yourself. If you want a separate video covering the lore of these games, let me know. This one has nothing that ties into the main timeline, so I'll just leave it there. Across the sea in Ionia, Kayn obtains the Darkin scythe known as Rost, which is a Darkin weapon. Remember the Darkin War? The aspects imprisoned the Darkin in their accursed weapons. This is one of those weapons. The weapon was unearthed in Noxus, and Kayn was sent to prevent it from ever being used against the defenders of Ionia. Were it any other acolyte, they would have destroyed the living scythe, known as Rost. Kayn instead took it for himself. The corruption took hold the moment his fingers closed around the weapon, locking them both in a fateful struggle. Rost has long awaited the perfect host in order to rejoin its darkened brethren and lay waste to the world. But Kayn will not be easily dominated. Kayn returned to Ionia to serve under his master, Zed, and the events of the Zed comic take place, after which Jhin escapes and travels to Piltover. Jhin is a meticulous criminal psychopath who believes murder is art. After Jhin kills members of several merchant clans selling weapons to Ionia, Clan Pharos and Camille try to deal with him in a Zonite theater. Jhin set multiple traps inside the theater he had taken hold of. What happens after the fight is unclear, but we know Jhin escapes. Not soon after, Zed and Shen, a lot of history between these two, arrive and battle with Jhin. They overpower and successfully recapture Jhin, returning him to Ionia. Zed takes his place as the leader of the Order of Shadow, and Shen continues his role as leader of the Kinku Order. A little about these two orders in Ionia. Zed created the Order of Shadow, an organization with the intent of militarizing Ionia's magical and martial traditions to drive out Noxian invaders. As for the Kinku Order, Shen is their leader, referred to as the Eye of Twilight. The Kinku Order is an ancient organization of Ionia that is dedicated to preserving a balance between the physical world and the spirit realm. But now let's move back to Shurima. Ezreal raids a Shuriman tomb to obtain the tear of the goddess. Few are fortunate enough to come across the tears of the very goddess who created our world. Now we don't know what this means. Is it actually a tear of the being who created Runeterra? We don't know, but that's the description for it. The moment Ezreal takes the tear, the tomb traps awaken. Voidlings then charge towards Ezreal. Kai'Sa steps in to save him, and after a brief hesitation, Ezreal joins Kai'Sa in fighting off the Voidborn. Now I know this isn't super important, but I feel like this and perhaps other tears of the goddess may be significant as the lore expands. At least I hope they do. Now at this point we've made it all the way to the events of the Rune King, another Riot Forge title. Again, I am not going to talk about the lore too much here, but if you want zero spoilers, feel free to skip to the next timestamp. An ensemble of champions, Misfortune, remember her, she blew up Gangplank's ship. Alawi, remember she's of the Buhru people. Braum, who's of the Freljord, Yasuo and Ari, who are of Ionia, and then another character, Pyke, who's also from Bilgewater. Each have their stories intertwined into the main quest. The crux of the story revolves around their fight against the Rune King, Viego, who we talked about earlier. Remember, he was the Camavorian king obsessed with reviving his lost queen, Isolde. His twisted love led to the cataclysm that created the Shadow Isles. The main plot is Viego is released by Thresh, and in the end the group is able to seal Viego away in a Buhru amulet. Now with Thresh out and about, you better believe Lucian comes back into the picture soon after. Wielding both his pistol and Senna's, Lucian hunted Thresh in the hopes of destroying his lantern and granting oblivion to his captive love. On the day that battle finally came, Lucian drove his broken pistol into the lantern, intending to end the torture of the souls within. But instead of finding her eternal rest, Senna re-emerged. Though Senna and Lucian's love survived even death, now they face the consequences of her rebirth. Senna knows what they have to do next. A secret gleaned within the lantern. Find the Rune King and stop him at any cost. Now going back to the north in Valoran, back in Demacia, the events of Mageseeker, another Riot Forge game, are taking place. Again, if you want to skip this, just head to the next timestamp, but I'm not going to delve into the lore too much, just the takeaway. In the magic-fearing nation of Demacia, Silas, a mage with a unique ability to harness other mages' powers, rebels against the oppressive Mageseekers after escaping execution with the unintended help of Lux, a noblewoman with hidden magical talents. Silas builds a rebellion, gathering allies and striking back at the Mageseekers. In the great city of Demacia, King Jarvan IV uncovers his late father's wishes to disband the group, causing him to question his stance on magic. Silas and Lux, alongside a group of rebel mages, protect Erebisia from Mageseeker forces, and even Garen, Lux's brother, moves to join the defense. This is pretty significant as it may signal a possible shift in Demacia's future policies towards magic. and those who wield it. Now at some point in the future after this, Thresh retrieves that amulet containing Viego, and although we don't know exactly how, Viego is freed. He then sets out to gather the fragments of Isolde and return it to life. This is where you have the Ruination, the harrowing spreading all across Runeterra from Demacia to Noxus to Ionia. Nowhere is safe. The Sentinels of Light journey across Runeterra and recruit any worthy fighters to their cause. They eventually confront Viego on the Shadow Isles. Viego defeats the Sentinels of Light, gathering the last fragments he needs to resurrect Isolde. He then opens a gateway to Camavor, walking through. He is unaware a Sentinel of Light named Akshan sneaks through as well. Viego gathers the fragments together, resurrecting Isolde, but killing Senna and Gwen in the process. Isolde is horrified at what Viego has become. Akshan, realizing his weapon isn't effective against Viego, is prompted by Isolde to shoot her instead. He kills Isolde with his Absolver, which revives Senna and Gwen, weakening Viego. Senna and Akshan attack Viego, and Gwen manages to bind him with her hollowed mist. Viego is left defeated and restrained in Camavor, and that is where he is today. The group returns to the Shadow Isles. However, they notice the Isles suspiciously remain plagued by the Black Mist. The reason turns out to be a newly corporeal Thresh. He has been siphoning the excess mist Viego was wasting and is now unbound from the Isles. Thresh currently roams free across Runeterra, eager to harvest more souls. Now finally we have Song of Nunu, again timestamps to skip. The only thing I really want to touch on here is the significance of the Heart of the Blue, also known as the Heart of Anivia, which was gifted to the Yetis. We now know this is the power within Nunu, as at the end of the game he heals Lissandra's eyesight for a moment. Lissandra then confirms that this is indeed the power of Anivia, once wielded by the Yetis, and thus the power to create true ice. Lissandra's new goal after realizing this is to prepare Nunu for what is to come, and we end with the Watchers currently trapped by an ever-weakening layer of true ice, patiently waiting and set on destroying all of existence. And now you're all caught up on Runeterra lore of the past. At present, Mordekaiser is ruling over his empire in the Afterworld. Viego is trapped by Gwen's hollowed mist in Camavor. Aurelion Sol waits eagerly in the distance to return to and destroy Runeterra, as the crown used to steal his power weakens. And the Watchers at the bottom of the Howling Abyss, with an ever-thinning layer of true ice being all that separates us from these void horrors. But bear in mind that this is an overview, barely scratches the surface on Runeterra's deep lore. There's a lot more to dive into for those interested. On my channel you can find detailed videos that cover many of the characters, places, and stories we've discussed here in greater depth. So if you're looking for more insights and extended tales from the world of Runeterra, check out those videos and like and subscribe for future ones. I want to welcome you again to Runeterra, and I will see you in the next one.